Hey guys, Lucas Sacco here. Today we have a how-to hand trap guide for the post-burst protocol format. This is going to be the format for the 300th YCS. Now this is not a where-to hand trap guide. I'm not going to show you a little chart with a little sheet on it that says, hey, you have Ash Blossom Rahu, right? I'm not going to do that. We're going to go through each individual deck. We're going to look at the variable situations where you should be hand trapping and where you should really be thinking about when you look at your hand. Whether you open one hand trap or two hand traps, what your goals should be. Now starting off, we have the most common thing that people are wondering about this format. It's what they're supposed to do with their Ash Blossom versus Draco Tail, because there's so many different points where you can actually hit this deck for value. Now let's explain this for just a second here. Hand traps are not a one problem, one solution type of card. Now, there may be times where it's more optimal to hit something versus a certain deck, like Ash Blossom on Branded Fusion. That's correct, maybe 95% of the time, a very large amount. However, that's not how it works for absolutely everything. Versus Draco Tail, there's a lot of different malleable points where you can hit them. You can hit them on Lucas, you can hit them on Fallen of White Dragon, Ecclesia, Branded Fusion, Rahu, Ketu, or any trap card, right? But where you hit them depends on what's in your hand. And we're going to go over what you should be looking for in your hand to try to make that decision. Lucas. Hand trapping Lucas is a high roll thing where you basically put them on having no other engine card, and you basically only do this when you brick, and you have to hope that your opponent's engine cards in their hand are not also able to play the game, because you have to force yourself to a situation with them where you are both absolutely doing nothing and you're putting yourself on top deck, because that's the only way you're going to win. That's pretty much the only time you're going to be Ash Blossoming Lucas. When they're going first, you're going second. Now, it could be different. If you're going first, you've established a board, right? If you have your own flame down there, and you know that they're going to use Lucas to add a 5 mana, and that's going to be able to push through your board, obviously, at that point in time, this is why hand traps are malleable. They are different. They're going to change based on the situation. But everything I'm going to refer to here is like 95% of the time what you're really going to be doing. We're not Ash Blossoming Lucas unless we're trying to top deck with them. Fallen of White Dragon, very similar thing. The only time that I think it may be different and you also want to hand trap Fallen of White Dragon is if you have some way to clear out basically all of the Draco Tail interactions. So clear out all of the trap cards that they establish off of their Draco Tail engine and clear the quick play spell. So if your hand is like a Droplet or another Ash Blossom plus Lightning Storm or plus Harpy, something like that, to where you're basically using the Ash Blossom to cut off the whole loop of the White Dragon stuff. That way they're not looping an Ecclesia and a Cartesia on you constantly. That's the only time, and even in the situations, it may still be better to hold on to that Ash Blossom. It really just depends on how strong your engine cards are, and if you think you can really push through the half board they're able to maintain through that. Ecclesia is kind of the same thing. The only thing with Ecclesia is it does take their normal summon, so it makes it much, much weaker for them to play the game. I think you're still just not going to be Ash Blossoming this card unless there's something else that like you need to happen. Like you have to force them on top deck. Now, Branded Fusion and Rahu, these are basically two different cards. I know a lot of people kind of group these together when you're looking at like how to interact with the deck. Branded Fusion, that card is kind of harmless. Like, I know it seems super scary, but if they're going first and you're holding on to an Ash Blossom, 90% of the time, it's better to just let the Branded Fusion go. Right? Let them resolve the Branded Fusion. Who cares? They can send a Frixel. They can get to one card. The one card is going to be Rahu. If you Ash the Rahu, like you've played around them having a Rahu in their hand, and it's also going to do a very, very good service to their board. Like, it's going to hurt their board a lot. Now, you still have the option of choosing not to Ash Blossom the Rahu at all. But the situation is most times when they activate Rahu, unless they have like several names in rotation that you can see and look at before they actually do anything, when they activate this Rahu, it's almost guaranteed getting them 2 to 3 trap cards. Ash Blossom can usually only stop 1 trap card, but if we plan ahead of time and we try to use how our opponent has sequenced their turn, we can get some more information out of it, like how many names they have, what they're going to be able to do for the rest of this turn if we do interact with this. And I think that Ash Blossom on Rahu is correct a very large percentage of the time. I think holding it for the trap card is kind of a bait because it's still too much for you to deal with in a lot of situations. Now, starting Rahu, you're almost always ashing that card. If my opponent starts with Activate Rahu, I mean, it pretty much says that they don't have any White Dragons in their hand, right? Or else they would have started with those before they get Fusion locked, right? It means my opponent doesn't have a good extender, like Lucas or Branded Fusion, because they also would have started with those first in most situations to play around things like Fuwalos, or to establish a stronger, like, Rahu to begin with. And so in the situations where they're starting with Rahu, I am ashing that, like, almost instantly, every single time. Now, let's look at Ash versus Ketu. Ash on Ketu's fake. Don't Ash Ketu if they're going first, unless you have like a card on your field for some reason, whatever reason. Don't Ash Ketu. Just wait it out until they activate Rahu, because they're going to eventually activate Rahu. But Ash Blossom on the traps. Ash Blossom on the traps is really dependent on your hand. if you're playing a Draco Tail Mirror, you have a Rahu plus a very powerful name, a Malulu, Urgula, Pan, something like that. That's when you can make the decision in your brain of, hey, I need to hold my Ash Blossom. They're going to get to one trap regardless. That one flame they're able to get to, that's going to check me. I might as well let them have the Sting and the Horn and whatever resources they get off of the Rahu. That way I can guaranteed play the game on this next turn with this Rahu resolving. Now, I mean, they could still have their own Ash Blossom, and you could get punished for this, but at that point in time, like, Ash is going to be able to be used on one of the trap cards throughout the turn, because you're going to know what interactions are coming up next. The next thing we're going to be looking at here is Belle. Belle into the Draco Tail matchup is a little bit weird, because I feel like this card was very overhyped at the beginning of the format. I think a lot of people are still going to play this card in their main deck, however, I don't think it's as powerful as we originally thought this would be. With Belle, you can hit it on a couple different points. You can Belle their Fallen of White Dragon. It's basically like ashing this from the previous discussion we just talked about with Ash Blossom. You can Belle their Graveyard effect of Urgula, which is going to add back 5 mana or Lucas most times. A lot of the time, this is what actually is needed for them to play the game. Being able to get back to not just a monster in hand, but a Draco Tail name specifically. That way they're able to go for more things. Gets them to a Spellcaster, which is used to make a Secret Tier a lot of the time to extend them much, much further. Ecclesia, you can Belle both of the effects of Ecclesia because it can summon from the graveyard, and it targets a guy in the graveyard to shuffle someone back. If they do target like something in their banish pile, it doesn't actually matter because itself is still getting shuffled back into the deck, and so you can always Belle this card. Fallen the Virtuous, if they do use the second effect of this card, you can Belle it. Just keep in mind, if you do Belle the second effect of Fallen the Virtuous, Belle does negate the activation, and so they can use another one throughout the turn, which is a little scary to deal with, you know. I mean, you're wasting a card from your hand, you're giving value to another card that they shouldn't actually get value of on the turn. And then, of course, we can Belle like all of the Draco Tail traps. There's a lot of different things that we can stop with Belle, specifically referring to the Draco Tail traps. I don't think that Belle is the strongest card in this format, but I think you're always going to use Belle like a backup plan, like Ash. How we had talked about if you have Ash and you specifically need one line of play to go through. That was a weird hand motion. But you have one Ash Blossom, and we are going to make sure that that line of play goes through. We're going to hold that Belle or that Ash Blossom for the trap so we can negate it to get our line of play to go through. Belle is just always that reserved effect. It doesn't have that much coverage like Ash does. I mean, there was like 10 cards on our field, and they were the best 10 cards in the deck when we were looking at Ash Blossom and Wicked Stop. Belle stops the secondary strong effects, right? But it also can be used on the trap cards. So just keep that in mind that Belle is basically just a worse version of Ash when you're building your deck, but it does still have the coverage. If your deck is a very strong, heavy spell deck, and you need to stop Flame a lot of the time in your deck, like Mitsurugi or Draco Tail Mirrors, it's just something to keep in mind that Belle is probably going to be very good for you. For Fuwalos, Draco Tail is shaping the metagame about how you actually use this card. Most of the time versus the deck, you're supposed to activate it in standby phase. That is just the correct thing to do. You go standby phase, you activate the card, and you're in a good spot. Here is why you should be doing that, and if you don't, you're going to end up getting punished. Let's say your opponent opens Lucas plus like White Dragon, or Lucas plus Rahu, Lucas plus Branded Fusion, any way to get a special summon where they would normally chain Fuwalos to. If we just normal the Lucas and use the effect to add 5 mana here, and then we activate something like Fallen the White Dragon to dump, use the effect to special summon from deck, and then they chain the Fuwalos. I mean, of course, we're just going to chain our 4 mana. I think I showed this in the Draco Tail video. But if we chain the 5 mana here, we're going to fusion with both the names that we were wanting to use anyways. We're going to get Chainlink 1 Arthalion, Chainlink 2 Lucas, Chainlink 2 whatever name we had, right? We're going to set 2 trap cards, add back our 5 mana, and then in the end phase, or we're going to even be able to use the Urgula if that's what we had to add back our Lucas. Then in the end phase, we're going to have Albion to set the quick play spell. Fua got 1 draw, right? 1 singular draw. We got to basically the full board. Things to mention with this board, there's an Albaz on our field, and there's a Dragon on our field. They can technically start their turn off by making Albalinitus. Who cares, right? I mean, they're taking 2 morons that didn't do anything anyways. They were just hanging out for fun. So, I mean, you're still getting to basically everything that you could possibly ever need with this specific board. And to be honest, just shooting the Fuwalos in standby phase also covers other decks, which we'll look at earlier or later into the video. But when you Fua them in standby phase, you also get to find out, like, if they're going to ash your stuff, which may make you interact differently with a Lucas. You know, if there's something like an Imperm in your hand, you may then feel inclined to Imperm the Lucas because they've ashed your Fuwalos already, and you're trying to play for like a higher variance push to basically run them out of resources. The next cool hand trap I wanted to look at here versus the Draco deck specifically is Izuna. I think this card is super slept on in this next format. There's a lot of cool things you can do with it. Most of the time for Izuna, you want to wait until they're basically at the end of their main phase. You want to wait until they're out of ways to fusion summon. We want to make sure they've already used Malulu effect. They've already used like the ability to trigger Pan this turn. Because most of the time, they're not setting up a good out for Izuna anyways. They're not setting up like a Mirror Jade on turn 0, right? And so whenever you do Izuna them, probably at the end of main phase, you're going to send your Lupus, use the Lupus effect to go ahead and special summon back, and then we're going to make an Exceed monster. We're going to overlay them into Wind Up Arsenals and Mayo. This is a card that is super, super cool, and not a lot of people have caught on to this card. It's basically Harpies, like a half a Harpies. This card is super cool. It's just a soft once per turn, detach, target 2 set cards, destroy them. It's also a big monster. It's 2600, so this guy can punch over like the Ecclesia Synchro monster, so basically forces them to use it when you try to go battle phase. It also threatens a Zeus very easily because it's very strong. But basically what you'll do in the situation that you're making in Mayo during their end phase, you'll use the effect whenever you get back to your turn. You're going to target the Horn and the Fallen the Virtuous, because those are the only two like interactions that they're going to have that are going to physically deal with the monsters that you're setting up, and things that would stop you from going for like an SP or a Zeus to actually fully clear their board if your deck can play that. Of course, if you're playing Izuna in your deck, you're probably playing a Zeus anyways, but this is just something to keep in mind. This is also a really neat card in Runic For Hire because it specifically destroys, and so if you're going into like a weird board, being able to use in Mayo to trigger your guy to draw 3 is also super cool. The next card I wanted to take a look at is Dominus Impulse. Dominus Impulse is very similar to Ash Blossom, but instead of having the choice of hitting the Rahu or hitting a trap card, you have the option to either hit the Rahu or hit 5 mana. Both of these are very dependent on your hand. I will say having the Impulse hit Rahu is almost guaranteed going to cut them off of multiple trap cards from their field, kind of like how Ash Blossom does. The only thing is like it's going to restrict you from activating certain cards, and so they're able to play into certain things differently. But it still does just so much value just impulsing the Rahu. Technically, opening multiple impulses versus this deck is very powerful. I mean, because you can hit the Rahu on their turn and the 5 mana on your turn, and you are straight up excited, right? You're tweaking, right? You have to deal with like 4 little purple cards. That's a board from 2014. That should be fine. You can deal with that. But those are like the main options here. You can also technically hit Branded Fusion with it. I wouldn't advise you hit Branded Fusion because, like we talked about just a little bit ago, Ash Blossom on Branded Fusion is a waste because all Branded Fusion does is get them to Rahu. And so if they're trying to get to Rahu anyways, you might as well just hold it for the Rahu to play around them having one in hand. For Infinite and Permanence, there's only 3 cards you can really hit in this deck for super good value. It's Arthalion, Lucas, and Fallen of the White Dragon. Now, I don't think decks should be playing hand traps right now, honestly. Board breakers have such a strong presence in the metagame that hand traps have just become lackluster. Like, you're never really stopping a push on from Draco Tail. If they start with normal summon Lucas, they have so many extenders, right? Rahu, Branded Fusion, Albaz. I mean, the list just goes on and on for things they can actually extend with. And so if you're going to be playing hand traps, you have to be playing at least like 15 to 20 of them. And you should be trying to lean into the side of the hand traps to try to fully cut them off of the game if you're playing 1-for-1 hand traps like Imperm or Mourner. So against this deck, I think a lot of the time I'm just going to be imperming the Lucas or imperming the Fallen of the White Dragon. Technically, if you really think that you can like wait because you have other interactions, like you have an Ash Blossom they'll eventually get to, you could imperm their Arthalion to stop their resource loop, and then whenever they activate the Rahu from their hand, you can pair it with an Ash Blossom to just kind of delete every card they would get back 4 resources. But if we're looking at imperm inside of a scope, only focusing on the one individual card, that is the best way to do it. Just hit the Lucas, hit the Albaz. And then the last thing I wanted to look at for the Draco Tail stuff and how to hand trap this deck is Retaliating C. This is a card that I know a lot of people have mixed opinions on. I think this card is still very, very powerful. No matter how they actually interact with you, the Retaliating C is still going to have a good enough value versus it. It's basically going to be an Ash Blossom regardless. Whatever spell they activate first, though, I'm activating Retaliating C. Ketu, Branded Fusion, Rahu, like all of them I'm activating Ret C on because that card is absolutely broken. We want to get the Floodgate on the field as fast as possible. The people who are saying that Retaliating C doesn't actually do enough, it's mainly because of the Albaz engine that they're saying it doesn't cover enough. And that's because you're going to be able to get to Cartesia, Ecclesia Synchro, a fusion monster really before you even play into Retaliating C. However, if you could side more copies of Ash Blossom, you probably would side them in versus this deck, right? Like if you could blank a Rahu 100% of the time, or blank something else, blank a Ketu, blank a Branded Fusion, I would be playing that card into my deck. If my deck could, of course, play it without conflicting. And so you should probably be playing this deck. If you're playing something like K9 For Hire, K9 Vanquish Soul, Radiant Typhoon, all of those decks can make very good use of this Retaliating C card, and you should just be doing it on the first spell card they activate. You shouldn't be trying to hold it to outplay anything. Moving on to Radiant Typhoon, we're going to look at Fua first. Same thing goes for this deck. You should just be activating the Fua in standby phase because you really don't know what deck you're playing against game 1. Activating Fua in standby is just simply correct for this format. Now, it doesn't really matter versus this deck, like I said. they are only going to summon from their extra deck 1 to 2 times. The only time you're going to catch them off guard is if they summon Magala first, which, even though I think it's correct for consistency, not a lot of people are increasing their Magala count just yet. But you're going to usually fool with them in this situation here that's on my field if you don't do it in standby phase, but you should just do it in standby phase. You're usually only get 1 draw anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Now, for Ash Blossom into this deck, I think you need to lean on this deck's side of weaker consistency. Instead of trying to hold this for a specific card, you should just be trying to 1-for-1 them out of the game because the deck is inconsistent. Here's the thing with inconsistent decks, is that it's not just the fact that they aren't playing the game a certain percentage of the time. If the deck is 92% consistent, that means 8% of the time they're not playing the game. But that means that out of that 92%, usually a lot of those, it's 1 line of play, right? So I'd say that probably 65 to 70% of the time, I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration. I can find the exact numbers later, but this deck has 1 line of play. And the 1 line of play obviously doesn't play through an Ash Blossom. If they go summon Eldom, use Eldom effect, and we Ash it, they're exploding. Now, the other option is that you could hold it for the Crocea. If you think that their board is pretty easy to deal with, and you're just wanting to try to guarantee trade with it, you could hold it for the Crocea. Or if they do their Crocea in standby phase, you could do it there as well. I'm sorry, draw phase to play on draw. You could Ash Blossom the Crocea in draw phase, because it's basically like hitting a starter anyways. However, that's just what you're supposed to do. Just try to cut this deck off of playing the game. The deck is too inconsistent to consistently play through hand traps like this. For Ghost Mourner or Imperm, they're basically the same card. You're going to be wanting to use this on their first line of play again. The cool thing with Mourner is that you can actually use this card in the draw phase to hit the Crocea, which is something that Valor cannot do. Another cool upside to Mourner is that Fallen in the Virtuous is technically a way to play through an Imperm-like card. If they Imperm your Crocea, you could chain Fallen the Virtuous to destroy your Crocea. However, if it's Mourner specifically, they can't do that interaction to chain Fallen the Virtuous and pop the Crocea because you have no cards in your spell and trap zone at that point in time, whereas Imperm you would. And the reason that matters is because the first line of Crocea says, cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects while your opponent has no spell/trap cards. That is going to help you in the situation. So Mourner does have more coverage into this matchup, and that's why you're doing it. Once again, though, we should just be throwing this at basically the first line of play because we're trying to lean onto that deck side of inconsistency. And if you're playing Mourner in your deck anyways, there's usually another 15 hand traps to accompany it. One other thing that we can actually Mourner is the Link 2. I'm not a big fan of Mournering the Link 2 because this card's basically just trading. If you Mourner the Link 2, you're trading with 1 MST, which is not terrible, and you're trading with the trap card. But if they have any other name, because this card is not technically once per turn to summon, if they have any other Radiant name, they can just link away the Varun that's on their field and any other Radiant Typhoon monster and make another, they changed this card's name. Iolodon. I'm cooked. Okay, sign me up for DB Grinder reading lessons. They can make another one of the Link 2, and any quick play spell they activate is going to trigger to set the trap card, so you're really not trading with too much. The other thing is, technically, if you Mourner their Link 2, they can just go, sure, pass. And then whenever they activate a quick play spell on your turn, it's going to trigger their Link 2 then to go ahead and put the trap, and they're just going to establish it on your turn. So I think it's better just to hit it on the actual main deck monsters that get them to playing the game. Droll. There's not much to talk about with Droll. You're going to activate Droll the first time you can activate Droll. This might be the only hand trap where the one problem, one solution type thing actually works. Have you guys seen that meme where it's you put the circle in the square hole and the triangle in the square hole? I'm going to throw it up on the screen right now. That's literally what Droll is. It's just, they added a card. Droll! It doesn't matter. You're just going to activate Droll anytime that you can. The main point of me bringing Droll on the screen right now, even, is just to tell you that this card is good versus the deck. Now, there are some downsides to it. Dimensional Fissure. If your deck loses to Dimensional Fissure, they're going to side that in anyways, which is going to counter your hand trap. So just be prepared for that and kind of think about that theory-wise whenever you're building your decks for this event. The next card we're going to look at is Belle. Belle is okay into the Radiant Typhoon deck. It's nothing super special. It's not an absolutely insane card. It's not an overly one more card. There's 2 points where you can Belle this deck. You can Belle the effective Crocea, which is okay. It's good if they had a quick play spell to add MST and they trigger Crocea to summon because it may be their only line of play. And you can go 1-for-1 on that Crocea. But you can also technically use Belle on the quick play spells, and the interaction is pretty neat here. Technically, if your opponent activates Vision and they go, I want to add MST, you can Belle that card. It's going to negate activation, which means that if they have something like Crocea in their hand, they're just going to look at it because they can't activate the card. Because we've resolved the chain link, Belle has resolved negating the activation of whatever Radiant quick play spell they activated, and because Crocea says, if a quick play spell is activated, That never happened. They can't summon the Crocea. So just keep that in mind. Those are the main 2 points that you can actually use Belle on versus deck. Corellia is a godsend versus deck. It's absolutely uncounterable. The only way to actually stop this is just with Ash. They don't have like a cool little half board they can go to. They usually have to give you 2 to 3 draws to establish anything that's actually worth looking at. Now, when you're using Corellia, you're either going to chain it to the effect of Crocea to summon, or you're going to use it in the standby phase. So in this instance, they activate Chant, Chant resolves, and then you chain, they go Crocea, you go boom, Corellia. Pretty hard to mess that up. You're going to chain it to something that's going to summon, or you're going to wait for them to go to standby phase, and they're going to use it before they summon. Pretty standard there. There's just not very many like points to talk about with Corellia versus this deck. You're just going to use it when you can. All right, and the last deck we're going to look at for this video is Vanquish Soul. Now, one cool thing with us standby phasing the Fuwalos, we're actually playing around Vanquish Soul, and especially like the new banlist restrictions of Vanquish Soul with them having more Stake Your Souls in their deck. And what I mean by that is with us activating the Fuwalos in standby phase, we're going to play around them having Stake Your Soul plus Ash Blossom. Because let's assume that Ash Blossom is the only fire in their hand. If we do Fuwalos in the standby phase, they have to make the conscious decision of, oh, if I Ash this, I don't have a fire for Stake Your Soul, or I cannot Ash this, I don't have any other attributes in hand, I have to eat the Fuwalos and then Stake Your Soul and play into it. If you wait on that, like you're not paying attention, you go, yeah, you can go to the main phase, that's fine. And they go, Stake Your Soul, look at my Ash Blossom. You're going to freak out and go, Fua! And they're going to go, Ash. You just saw it. Ash, right? And so you should just play around the card ahead of time. Just be smart, play around the cards you're supposed to, Fua in standby phase. This only plays into one card versus this deck. It's Izuna. Technically, if you Fua them, they have no lines of play and they have Izuna in their hand, they're going to be able to play the game. However, you were probably going to get hand trapped with the Izuna anyways, and they're not getting a lot more value off of this Izuna by just getting the trigger off of Fuwalos, because you're also getting your Fuwalos card back in this instance here. So it's really not that big of a detriment to you, and it plays around a very, very common situation of them having Stake Your Soul plus a fire monster, and the fire monster is Ash. Peruli is also very strong versus this deck. There's not much to talk about with it. You're not going to be able to chain Fuwalos to anything, or Peruli to anything. You just activate the card in standby phase. Pretty simple. It does play into Izuna again, just like we talked about in the previous example, but same thing kind of sticks. If they had an Izuna anyways, they were going to use it to hand trap you. They don't get that much more interaction out of it. Now, Ash Blossom versus this deck actually has a lot of coverage. You can hit quite a few things in this deck. You can hit Raisin. I feel like before it was not correct to hit Raisin. You were kind of just supposed to wait until their Holy Suit hit the field, and you were supposed to use Ash Blossom as a board breaker for it. Or you were trying to like use your Ash Blossom to hit the field spell, or just hit the Mad Love in general to try to cut them out of the loop of that. But now that Holy Suit's at 1, that's their biggest extender. I think it's okay at this point in time if they normal summon Raisin to just Ash the Raisin, because you're going to be very, very comfortable putting them off of that. But also it's going to stop them from getting a like minimum board of like stake your rock to special the Raisin, which would add like a dark monster and be able to destroy or something like that. The next thing you can hit is Noroi. Noroi is their other normal summon of the deck. A lot of people are playing one Noroi and multiple Raisins, or they're playing like 3 Norois and like less Mad Loves. But regardless, if they normal summon Noroi, you're having to Ash Blossom this card. If you don't, they're going to make a Ripper. They're going to summon Lupus from their deck. They're going to make a Ripper. They're going to detach whatever. They're going to search for a Lantern, special back to Noroi, look at the Ash Blossom, and they're going to call you stupid because they have a Ripper on their field. Ash Blossom Noroi. It's really not that hard here. Chaotic Elements and Stake Your Soul. These are also 2 very powerful spell cards in the deck. Chaotic Elements is just going to add them Lantern like 90% of the time. And if they have Lantern, like I don't think there's ever been a game state ever where someone's activated, I just said Lantern a bunch, I'm so sorry. They're going to activate Chaotic Elements, they're going to add Jokel, right? Jokel's a limited card, that means it's good. That's just what it means. I don't think there's been a game in human history where opponent went, activate Jokel, reveal a 5, and you sat there with your one little Ash Blossom in your hand, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to win. Just doesn't happen. Ash Blossom Chaotic Elements, Ash Blossom Case, just cut them off of that loop. And then Stake Your Soul is like the other potential card you can Ash. I think the only time that you're supposed to really Ash the Stake Your Soul is if they start with like Stake Your Soul, reveal a really bad Dark, or Stake Your Soul, reveal a Fire. I think those are the only times that you really should be worried about ashing it. If they just go like Stake Your Soul, reveal a Mad Love, I mean, they're just summoning a Borger. If they go Stake Your Soul, reveal a Raisin, I mean, they're just going to summon a Jiaolong, which isn't going to, one Ash Blossom's not going to hurt that either. Has to be like a bad fire monster or a bad dark monster for you to be wanting to ash this Stake Your Soul. And back to Droll, just activate the card. This Droll goes in the Droll hole, you know? Like, as soon as Droll finds its opening to be activated, we're going to chunk that guy. I felt like one thing I didn't cover with the Radiant part about Droll, because we went by it really fast. One thing that's pretty keen to take note of with Droll versus that deck is you can actually take advantage of a very big like priority window with Droll versus that deck. If they go special summon Swin and they use the effect of Swin to add Chant, and then they activate Chant without saying anything, technically they're activating that card on quick effect priority. It means that before you've had the chance to even activate Droll, they have decided with their turn player priority to activate the Chant. Since they did not say they were passing priority to you, they didn't give you a window to activate anything, they're taking advantage of their priority. In that instance, you can chain Droll to their Chant. So it'd be Chainlink 1 Chant, Chainlink 2 Droll, Droll resolves, they have no Chant, they're sad, and they look dumb. Just be aware of that. Technically, you should try to communicate, make sure communication's as clear as possible with your opponent. They activate their Chant on the resolution, and you go, oh, with quick effect priority, they're gonna go, yeah, I guess I didn't say anything, and then you activate Droll, and you'll be in a very good position there. Just try not to shark. You're not trying to shark your opponent. That's just how the game works. If they misplay in that situation, that's where you can take advantage of it. But do not shark your opponent. Like don't tell them, hey, Lucas Sacco said that you can't do that. No, communicate with your opponent. Ask him, hey, are you doing this there? If they say yes, then you can take advantage of the situation because they have misplayed. If they say, oh no, like, did you have anything on res? Just go, oh, yeah, I'll go ahead and change Droll, right? Be an honest duelist. Moving on, we have the next card here, which is Impermanent Impulse. These cards are very strong versus the Canine parts of the deck. Whether you're playing against Canine Furhire, Canine Vanquish Soul, Canine Christian, you're going to be using your Impulses and your Imperms on their Noroi. It's just you can't let this card resolve because they just get too much out of it. The good thing with Impermanent Impulses is they're purple cards, right? So they're not going to play into the Izuna. And so this Izuna, they're just going to end up looking really sad with it. No Izuna. Anyways, guys, that is going to be it for the video. If you guys want to see more things like this, please let me know. If you guys would prefer a super basic tutorial instead, where I just point an arrow at a certain card like other YouTubers do, let me know. I probably won't be doing content that's that basic because honestly, the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not that basic, and spreading information that isn't correct is just not something that I'm super keen on doing. I'd rather share a full, complete side of my story and my thought processes behind things because that absolutely affects the manner of how you should be thinking. Shout out to the merchandise. I can never get this right, but shout out to the Homeless merch. I've got like 40 hats to give away. I'm going to give them out at YCS Richmond. Try to find me on that Friday. It's whoever gets to them first. I'm just giving them away. I'm not charging you guys anything there. Besides that, though, guys, if you liked watching the video, leave a like, comment it, and subscribe. I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic day. Thanks. Bye-bye.